us this morning as we provide an update to our community on a recent case. There are many jobs in our agency that are tougher than those involving abused children. These incidents are horrific, heartbreaking cases of abuse and neglect, and they involve the most innocent and defenseless among our community. On Sunday, our patrol deputies and investigators responded to a gruesome child abandonment case. For many agency veterans, it was the most disturbing scene they worked in their entire law enforcement career. It seemed too horrific to be real. It's hard to even explain to you that feeling. Our investigators immediately began piecing together what happened and trying to unfold a seemingly senseless death of a child who was supposed to be loved and cared for, and trying to understand unspeakable living conditions for the dead child's siblings who were left alone for months to fend for each other. We are here to share what we know today and to share our continued commitment to these children and our community. We must work tirelessly as child safety advocates to protect our most vulnerable, and we must work as a team. Sergeant Dennis Wolford with our homicide unit will be talking through the charges with you and any updates on this active investigation. And I want to emphasize active. It's still an active investigation that is continuing. Briefly, I want to provide a scene recap. On Sunday, October 24th, 2021, at about 3:15 p.m., our deputies received a phone call from a 15-year-old child who advised that his brother had been dead for a year and his body was in an apartment unit at 3530 Greencrest near West Park Tollway. He also stated that his parents had not lived in the apartment in West Harris County with him and his siblings for several months. Our patrol deputies found a 15-year-old and two other male children in an apartment unit, ages 10 and 7, who appeared malnourished and showed signs of physical injury. They also found skeletal, dry remains. The Sheriff's Office Homicide Unit, Child Abuse Unit, and Crime Scene Unit investigators responded to the scene. The children were taken to a local hospital to be assessed and treated. The Texas Department of Family and Protective Services received emergency custody of them. Now I want to pause just briefly just to say that in the midst of the darkness and this horrific situation, that I'm so glad that that 15-year-old finally reached out for help. I want to say that I'm glad that he found assistance at the end of the other line with one of our call takers. And I'm comforted to know that when he opened the door and there was a Harris County Sheriff's Office deputies there, that they could finally receive the care and protection that they've needed for so long. And that's what law enforcement does every single day, finding people in their darkest moments. The mother of the children, 35-year-old Gloria Yvette Williams, and her boyfriend, 31-year-old Brian Ward Coulter, were located late Sunday night and interviewed by investigators before being released without charges. Now, I think it's important to note that at that point, it's still an ongoing active investigation. We didn't find them until late that night. And so we have to make sure that we're being thorough, not getting ahead of the evidence and the investigation that's ongoing. And so at that point, they were released without any charges. On Tuesday, October 26, 2021, the Sheriff's Office Homicide Unit charged the mother's boyfriend, Brian Coulter, with the murder of the child, who was confirmed to be 8 years old at the time of his death in 2020. The manner and cause of death were ruled a murder by multiple blunt force injuries, according to the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences. The mother of the murdered child, Gloria Yvette Williams, was charged with injury to a child by omission and tampering with evidence. Both Williams and Coulter were taken into custody without incident by our criminal warrants unit investigators, and this remains an active investigation. At this point, I want to introduce Sergeant Dennis Wolford, the lead investigator with our homicide unit, that will speak about the child's murder and updates. A lot of this information will still be general. Keep in mind, there are certain things we can answer, other things we simply can't at this point for a variety of reasons. And it remains active because there's always a possibility, as we mentioned, that there could be additional charges, that charges could be upgraded. So it's still an unfolding investigation at this point. But at this point, I introduce Sergeant Wolford.
Good morning. Again, my name's Sergeant Dennis Wolford. I'm the supervisor of the homicide unit that was tasked with investigating this. It's a group of 6 investigators. The lead investigator is actually Deputy John Craig. Child abuse also made the scene with us, and they were invaluable in the input that they gave us dealing with CPS and things like that. One of the things that I want to express, I know that there was a lot of people upset that these people weren't taken into custody right away. And one of the things you have to understand is, one, the law of statements, the laws of the state of Texas, and how we get these things into trial. We knew at that point that these children were safe because they were in CPS custody. And, the decision was made not to arrest that night. And the reason is because a lot of evidence has to come in before we can actually file charges, including a ruling from the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences on what caused this child's death. We also had numerous people, forensic interviews with the children and stuff like that had to be done. Plus, we have to corroborate what the children are telling us before charges can be filed. So believe me, we, from the very beginning, me, the 6 of us, the child abuse guys, we were focused on getting these charges done. We wanted to get them done as quickly as possible. But above all murder investigations, child deaths, child murders, they are methodical investigations. And our end goal is to see that justice is served, not to just put people in jail. We want justice to be served. I will answer any questions that I can for you. There may be some that I cannot. Again, as the sheriff said, in my long time of working homicides, this one's up there. This one affected us.
We'll circle back with the questions just a bit. Let me.
Sure. Just.
And I also want to mention that we have members here from our Crimes Against Children unit as well. Lieutenant Lovett and his team are here as well, and so they'll be present if there's certain questions that perhaps they can answer. I do want to just mention a couple things that may come up before we get into other parts of it, is that it's our understanding that the children that were present in the apartment, that there were two fathers involved, not involved in the scene, what I'm saying in terms of connected to them. We're told, we haven't confirmed it yet, but that one is possibly deceased already and the other was simply not involved in the lives of the children, so they were not in the picture. There's also, I believe, at least 2 other siblings that were not in the apartment that are elsewhere as well. So I just wanted to mention that we are aware of those dynamics as well. I want to just briefly say it in Spanish as well, just recap what we had. El día domingo, el 24, como a las 3:15, recibimos una llamada de un adolescente de 15 años que avisó que quería reportar de que su hermano había estado muerto por más de un año y que el cadáver estaba dentro de la unidad, en los apartamentos en el 3530 Greencrest. Mencionaron también que los parientes no habían estado en la unidad por varios meses y que él estaba cuidando a sus niños. Cuando llegaron nuestros oficiales, encontraron un estado de descuido horroroso. Encontraron al adolescente de 15 años y 2 niños también de edades de 10 a 15 años. Estaban desnutridos, tenían también lesiones físicas. Entonces comenzamos nuestra investigación. Hemos puesto cargos contra a la mamá de 35 años, Gloria Williams, y el novio de ella, 31 años, Brian Coulter, por los diferentes hechos. Él recibió los cargos más fuertes, que han sido del asesinato del niño pequeño, que determinamos que tenía 8 años a su tiempo de muerte el año pasado. Esta investigación va a seguir continuando porque hay diferentes aspectos y ha sido una de las investigaciones más duras para todos nosotros. Entonces vamos a seguir adelante para encontrarle justicia a estos niños. Again, may this little angel rest in peace. Didn't have a chance. It's very heartbreaking, and we offer our condolences just, to the siblings that remain and anyone that has ever cared for these children in some form or fashion. And so our heart breaks for them, and we're going to do everything possible to be there are aspects through the part of the system that we control, and that we leave no stone unturned, as I promised at the scene. And we will also, our prayer, or my prayer, is that the remaining children find the love, support, and protection that they so desperately need and deserve, and that they have been missing for so long. And I hope that their future is better than their past. We're also told that they hadn't been in school since last May, so for more than a year they've been missing out on that as well. So there's a lot of factors to this, a lot of moving parts, and so that's where we're at right now. I'll go ahead and pause just to see if there's any. I'm sure there'll be questions, but Donald?
What were the children's injuries? You said when you found them they appeared to be malnourished and physically injured. What were their injuries?
Lieutenant, do you want to speak a little bit to the injuries, or does anyone know just the physical injuries?
So the 9-year-old does have an injury to the jaw that we come to believe was caused to his jaw by the boyfriend, Brian Coulter, several weeks ago. There was no medical attention given for that injury. That injury is going to cause, he's going to have surgery, and that surgery will happen soon. They were very thin. One of the first things I asked them what they are they hungry, and they said they were. And the first thing, I don't know if it was because we're cops or what, but they wanted donuts. So, and we immediately went and got them Shipley's donuts. But the physical injury that was evident to the 9-year-old, that's the only real overt sign of trauma to them as far as physically.
I want to mention as well, because that was something that was very disturbing, is that back to the different parts, we had the dry remains, skeletal remains that were present. So clearly in our initial observations, the body had been there for a long time, and so that was disturbing. But on top of that, we had a serious injury to another small child that apparently had not received, to our knowledge, any kind of medical attention, any pain treatment or anything like that during the course of this. I also want to point out as well, I mentioned a little bit that the apartment was in a deplorable condition. We saw soiled carpet, no furniture at all, no bedding, no blankets, nothing that we could see, and it appeared to have roaches and flies and just things. It was very bad condition for anyone, especially children, to live in.
I spoke with neighbors who were the ones helping give that 15-year-old food, and they didn't know there were 2 other boys inside that apartment. To your knowledge, did the 2 younger boys ever leave the apartment for several months? Were they stuck in the apartment?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, I do not believe that the 2 young boys were ever allowed to leave that apartment. There is some evidence that perhaps they were locked in, possibly different parts of the apartment, and they were not to leave that apartment, from what I understand.
With what you can tell us, it obviously took, the 15-year-old was brave enough to call you guys, but it did take a year. Fear, what can you tell us about what he's saying? Threatening? What took so long to call authorities?
I believe it was absolute fear. What the investigation is leading us to the fact that this mother and her boyfriend have been together for a few years now, a couple years. And over time, I think that the beatings were consistent and mainly, involving the younger children. And the 15-year-old just absolutely afraid and was basically hoping or relying on his mother to at some point contact law enforcement and advise of his deceased brother in the house, and that didn't happen. And I think after a year's time, the 15-year-old boy finally said enough is enough, and that's when he decided to contact law enforcement.
So those children have been through a lot of trauma, and so again, I mean, fear, the death of a sibling and other things, it's just heartbreaking, and so the trauma is just at another level. So, one in Spanish?
Sí. ¿Dónde estaban estos señores? ¿Dónde estaba la esposa, la madre y este señor? ¿Dónde los encontraron?
Ellos estaban viviendo, pues hay diferentes aspectos. Uno es cuando fueron arrestados y el otro estaban viviendo en otro apartamento. tenían otro apartamento donde vivían juntos.
Y la pregunta que le quiero hacer es porque ustedes los encuentran, ustedes acaban de describir las condiciones que estos niños estaban, no tenían muebles, no tenían nada, ni una cobija, nada. ¿Estos señores estaban bien en un apartamento amueblado y todo?
The question, first of all, I was asking where they were at, the boyfriend and the mother, generally speaking, and I said that they were living in a separate apartment of their own. And so the follow-up question was, do we know if that apartment was more decent and more well taken care of than the one the kids were in? So I don't know if we know that detail, but do we know the condition of the apartment they were in?
We do not know that yet. We have, we're in contact with that complex, and that is on the follow-up stuff we have to do in this week, is to go over there and document what.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this, I'm sorry. Any clue of why this happened? Have you talked to these individuals to say as to what was going through their mind in doing this to these kids?
Well,
Especially the mother.
Without giving direct quotes or saying what we learned in these interviews or things of that nature, you have to understand a child abuser, and this is a textbook case of a person that abuses children, and the mindset, the demeanor, the children that are abused, 7, 9 years old, 12 years old, very, very vulnerable children. One of the things, these are also something that's probably not out yet, is that these are special needs children. And so you have a very manipulative person who's not only, and this mother had a year to contact law enforcement. So you can't tell me that for every minute for a year, you were afraid. But this is a classic child abuser. So someone that picks on these young children, and whether it gives them some kind of I don't know the word for it, some kind of makes them feel better about themselves to abuse these children, I don't know. But I do think that the type of person this is very manipulative from the children they're abusing to the mother as well.
So was he the abuser? Was she the abuser?
Well, I would say they're both abusers. He's an abuser physically, and she's an abuser by omission. Very much so.
Can you talk about why the mother and the boyfriend made the decision to leave the apartment, to find a new place to live?
Well, I would absolutely think that common sense would tell you that they're distancing themselves from a dead child, and they know that it's gone on for, by the time they moved out, you're talking about probably 5 to 6 months after death. They know the entire time that there's a dead body in this apartment. Leaving the kids there in the apartment, yet those two, the two that are guilty in several different areas, they're going to separate themselves. So they go living in another apartment so that they don't have to be around them.
And the mother, we believe, was providing some food by delivery service or having food dropped off on a fairly routine basis. I didn't see anything that was healthy type of food. It was,
No,
I think,
ramen.
more like junk food,
Noodles
and chips and soft drinks and things like that. Let me work my way over here.
First question, is there any evidence that the mother was being physically abused herself?
No.
No evidence of that. No outcry has been made from
And
the
then,
mother.
can you give us any information about CPS's prior interaction with this family and why that investigation ceased?
We're going to refer that to CPS. Obviously, they could speak to their own investigations and what they have on file. So we're not going to speak to that. Let me make my way.
Can you provide any information about what led to the child's death? I mean, I know you said that.
It's just blunt force trauma is what we know. I mean, it's still. We'll work with the medical examiners to get more into the weeds on that. But again, that was another twist to all this, is that we were, in addition to one serious child that's alive with serious injuries and the malnourishment and abandonment, we had a skeletal dry remains for that were discovered as well. So we'll work through that with the medical examiners, but it was ruled a homicide due to blunt force injuries.
It was happening in 2020, but do you have
2020, we think approximately November.
Any more
right?
exact date than that?
you ask
Is it
for an
one month?
exact date? I'm sorry. No, we do not have more of an exact date than that.
Within a
We
month,
believe we're using Thanksgiving of 2020, sometime around November 20th through November 29th is the kind of the reference point we're using there. And we absolutely believe that that's when that child was killed.
And based on state of decomposition, all these were dry remains. I would just want to be clear with that. It wasn't, it was already
And is that when
at
they
that
moved
stage.
out to?
Let me make, let me.
Two questions about the building management. One, who was paying for the bills? Were the bills being paid?
Our understanding is that they were receiving some type of maybe government assistance for that. I don't know how those payments are done, if they're directly to the apartment and how they were handled.
And will part of your investigation be looking at this apartment complex? I'm told with this housing complex, they're supposed to be doing inspections regularly, pest control, looking at when the last time someone was inside the apartment. Was there any failure on their part as well?
We will document that, obviously, all of that, but I don't think that the focus of our investigation, the Harris County Sheriff's Office, will be on whether there's any type of liability on that apartment complex, any type of criminal liability. You know, ours is strictly the murder of this child and the fact that the mother did not contact law enforcement, report this, or get any kind of help for any of her children that needed it.
Are all 4 children special needs? What type of special needs do they have, and were they in the
We've
same
received
group?
some information that at least 2 may be on the autistic spectrum, but we're not, medical professionals know that part yet. We don't, but that's the general information that we've received. So on top of being abandoned, these are children that really needed some additional care and support to, understanding the dynamics of that.
¿Podría decir eso en español, por favor?
Nos dicen que los niños tal vez estaban autistic, por lo menos 2. No somos médicos para estar seguros, pero es lo que nos han dicho, que tal vez tenían autismo.
Algo así, mucha gente se cuestiona cómo fue posible que tanto tiempo permaneciera un cuerpo. Creo que hasta ustedes están bien impactados con eso.
Sí, no, bastante. No habíamos visto una situación así con todos esos elementos, pero parece ser que los restos habían estado allí ya por más de un año. Es lo que tenemos entendido, que es cuando sospechamos que el novio asesinó al niño y mantuvieron el cuerpo allí. Parece que ellos se mudaron ese apartamento a otro apartamento aparte y dejaron a los niños abandonados ahí.
¿Cómo estaba el cuerpo del niño?
Ya estaba en una situación de restos óseos, parece que le dicen restos óseos, como se dice,
Ajá.
como el cadáver, ya solamente estaba el cadáver seco, no era algo que había pasado
No lo
recientemente.
tenían escondido.
No, estaba, the remains, the skeletal remains were found in plain view, if you will. They weren't concealed in any way or anything like
Do you believe the boyfriend and mother were going back to the apartment and actually hurting the children while still giving them food?
Well, if the injury to the small child would indicate there was still some level of contact, so I don't know. I don't think they were really spending much time in there at all. But Sarge, do you have anything?
Yeah, the evidence that they continued to abuse these children is that, one, the injury to the 9-year-old boy that we understand did not occur in that apartment, that injury to him, that he had been picked up and he was taken somewhere and then brought back.
And then, so they were in this apartment for so long. We had some neighbors giving them food. Somebody said he looked really thin. They were not in school. A message to parents. How important is it when you see stuff like this to call for help, to say, hey, these kids, I'm worried. They're in this apartment. I've been giving them food for X amount of months. He looks really thin. How important is it that we call 911 in these cases? Because we probably could have, helped these kids a lot earlier, and they're at this point, they're just traumatized by what happened.
Well, that's a perfect segue, because I do want to kind of close at least some of the formal, and if we still have questions, we'll answer a few more, but I wanted to make sure I got this in. We rely on our community to report abuse and keep our children safe when they see the signs of a child in need. Signs of abuse aren't always obvious, but they are often there if you know where to look. We are asking every adult in our community to help. Take actionable steps to create safer environments for the children in your life. 1, if you see something, say something. Reporting suspicions of child abuse can save a life, prevent further victimization, or stop more children from being victimized. 2, learn how to recognize and report child abuse. Education and training are our best defense against those who harm children. 3, talk to your children. Start the conversation early and continue the discussion throughout their upbringing. 4, spread the message. Tell your neighbors and loved ones how they, too, can do their part to keep our children safe in a real and virtual world. Our partners at the Children's Assessment Center offer free training and resources on the signs and symptoms of child abuse and share stories of survivors throughout the year. Sadly, in 2020, nearly 4,000 children received services at the Children's Assessment Center here in Harris County. These experts provide high-quality care so children can thrive. Their work embodies the sentiment, no future should be out of reach. And while the work of our Sheriff's Office specialized units is always essential, it is especially critical during a crisis. The disruption brought on by the pandemic made our children even more vulnerable to abuse. Some of those traditional safety nets have been removed, with children not regularly attending schools, daycares, and after-school programs. We have a shared responsibility and shared commitment to ensure every child lives a life free from abuse. Prevention through education is key. If you're concerned about your child in your life, call us at 713-221-6000. If you want to remain anonymous, call Crime Stoppers at 713-222-TIPS. And in closing, I want to make sure that I just recognize our personnel, those in the front lines, the deputies that first responded, the sergeants, the call taker, the investigators, our crime scene unit investigators, our warrants team, just everybody. It really has taken an entire team. They've worked tirelessly around the clock and have really given it their all to make sure we got to this point. And I know sometimes the general public wants us to work a case as if it were a crime series and everything's going to be wrapped up in an hour. I understand that. We understand their same frustration and concerns and eagerness, but we have to stay focused with what's in our line of sight, make sure we're being professionals. We owe it to these children to make sure that if a case comes to trial, that there's a chance for successful prosecution. So we want to make sure that we're being thorough. And sometimes we can't just go with what our own personal feelings may be. We have to put those aside and focus on the job at hand. So I want to thank all of them here today and those that may not be present because they're obviously out in the field doing other work. We'll take just a couple closing questions and then we'll have to stop.
I know that you said that whenever you saw the kids, they were hungry, but emotionally, how were they? Were they relieved? Were they happy? How did they react when they saw you guys?
In my opinion, those children were younger than their chronological age. They were very sweet children, very nice, very well-spoken. And you know, from the very beginning, everything we asked them, they were just straightforward. But, you know, at the same time, though, you have that 1,000-yard stare, you know, that blankness in the eyes, but they were as sweet as they can be, you know. It was very sad, but, you know, they are good children.
Were each of the children, from the youngest, aware of the abuse that the boyfriend's accused of? And then were they aware that the body was there decomposing over the year?
They were aware of the body being there. I don't know how much detail we want to say about what each one knew or not. Just as
I will say those children will be very vital and key witnesses in the prosecution of Mr. Coulter.
Will you guys release the 911 calls? Or the 911
calls? We'll talk about that, and if it's something we can do, we'll for transparency, we'll try to get that out. Dime, porque...
En español, rapidito, que esos niños están marcados de por vida.
Sí, los niños, él describió los niños que a primer ojo parecía ser que no estaban de un estado de madurez para su edad, pero que aparte de todo estaban muy amables, muy agradecidos, estaban bien, pero que obviamente van a necesitar mucho apoyo en los años en el futuro.
Y por favor, dígale a la comunidad qué tiene que hacer para evitar ese tipo de...
Sí, pues le pedimos al público que ponga ojo. Muchas veces hay situaciones donde pueden ver que un vecino o algo, que hay una situación donde los niños están desnutridos o que no ven a los padres muy seguido. Hablen repórtenlo, déjenos que vengamos a investigar y después ya nosotros nos podemos tomar cargo. Está bien si no está pasando nada, pero si está pasando algo es el momento de intervenir, hable con sus hijos. Lamentablemente con lo de la pandemia y todo, muchos sistemas que estaban ahí para apoyar a los niños como las escuelas y las maestras, y muchas veces se derrumbó esos sistemas, pero es para los vecinos y los demás. Si comienzan a ver algo sospechoso, es mejor que hablen y que lo reporten.
¿Qué se puede hacer si una familia no tiene, no es capaz de la responsabilidad de una familia? ¿Qué puede hacer?
No, pues tienen que hablar a las autoridades y hay diferentes sistemas de apoyo que están allí para ayudar a familias, pero no es ninguna excusa de que abandonen a su familia, los niños de menor edad y todo eso.
Can you clarify the ages of the children and how far away did the mom and boyfriend live?
15 ages, were 15, 10.
15, 7, and 9.
And I believe they were staying in West Houston?
How far is
Is
that
it
location?
approximately, like,
Their new apartment from the old,
It was
about a 25-minute drive.
Were there any previous law enforcement calls to service involving that address or the family?
have we checked that particular unit?
Yes, there are none that they've been able to find as of today.
The smell, how did they control the smell for people not to?
I don't know.
Yeah,
It just,
right.
that baffles us. We've been to a lot of scenes like that, and that smell is one that stays with you. And so I don't know. I mean, I feel for those children and everything they've endured. Their physical injuries and situation, as well as the mental and emotional aspects of everything they've endured. So again, my hope and prayer, and I'm sure that the community shares, is that these kids find the love, support, and care that they deserve and need, and all children do.
¿Puede decir eso en español? El olor, ¿cómo
Si el olor, no sé cómo lo controlaron, es un olor muy fuerte cuando fallece alguien y especialmente cuando un cadáver estuvo ahí, los restos estuvieron ahí por mucho tiempo. Entonces, ya después se va pasando el olor, pero no sé cómo pudieron haber sobrevivido pero pasado esa etapa donde estaba esa. But we'll go ahead and close at this point. Gil's available and others will be available if anything comes up. And again, thank you so much for sharing this story with the community, and we hope to raise awareness about what's out there in the community. Again, thank you to